From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
A new commitment to Rhode Island to buy electric boat.
The state's partnership will also help us secure additional work in the future by improving our capacity and competitive position.
Governor Gina Raimondo argues it's another sign her economic development policies are working, while her growing list of challengers say she's using too much taxpayer money to get the job done. Who's right, and what's the latest on other big projects like the Paw Sox and the Superman building? This week on Newsmakers, Rhode Island Commerce Secretary Stefan Pryor. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the program from WPRI.com, reporter Ted Nesi. Commerce Secretary Stefan Pryor, welcome to the program. It's good to have you back.
Good to be back, Tim and Ted.
Let's start with electric boat. I'm sure you want to start there.
I'd love to.
Tens of millions in incentives over the next decade and another $14 million in infrastructure improvements to the Quonset area. Electric boat is making a commitment as well. If I read it right, $800 million, building a big facility,
yes,
promising some 1,300 jobs. I have a lot of incentive questions. I'll start with this one first. What happens when there is a turnover at governor, because this is a 10-year plan,
right?
And if that governor has a different philosophy towards these incentives, is the next governor locked in, or can they turn that spigot off?
Well, I think it's important to note that there's a $14 million contribution to infrastructure at Quonset. Mm-hmm. So that includes the deepening of the water through dredging. That includes pier structures. That includes roadways. Those will be beneficial to electric boat definitively, but also to future tenancies and to the park as a whole. So that's an investment in the future of Quonset, and there's a lot of activity going on there. There's over 200 businesses. It's really thriving. So that's a great investment. There'd be no reason to turn that off. That's a growth trend in the right direction. The other incentives, there's $2 million in Rebuild Rhode Island tax credits, a relatively modest amount, and then there's a sales tax exemption. Those amounts are linked to the performance of the company. They have to actually produce those jobs. So whether it's this governor or another governor, it doesn't matter. The company has to produce in order to get the benefit.
It doesn't matter till it does. My question is, what if the next governor says, yeah, I want to end that deal where these incentives are tied to job growth? Can they do that?
Essentially, no. But what I would argue is, why in the world would they want to do that? The CEO of Electric Boat stood at the press conference and said, 1,300 may not be the end point. There may be hundreds more jobs. This is a terrific investment that will yield returns even greater.
So I was actually having trouble nailing down the actual incentive package for Electric Boat. I've seen it written a few different ways. What is the actual numbers? You said $2 million here. When you put all the packages together, what is the total end number for incentives?
The reason that you hear it that way is it does depend upon, in the case of a sales tax exemption, what they purchase, and then the actual yielding of those dollars.
So what's the cap? What could they get?
The maximum amount is something like $34 million. Okay. It's about 20, and then those $14 million in the infrastructure investments, which really are not incentives, but are building the platform for Quonset, including Electric Boat.
Okay. I want to ask you, Matt Brown, for example, who's running against your boss, he pointed out, and he has a point, Electric Boat is part of a huge and profitable global corporation. They've got a big tax cut from the federal government. Why do they need, at least $20 million, if you ignore the infrastructure thing, from Rhode Island to do this? Can't they fund it themselves?
We probed this question intensively, and I think most everyone who looked at the deal said, we got a very good deal, because jurisdictions across the country, states, make investments in military, in defense kinds of industries. Ours is a relatively thin investment for the kind of yield of thousands of jobs, 1,300 and maybe hundreds more, that result from this. The reason we need to do so is to make sure that Electric Boat in particular is competitive in this region, in Rhode Island, truly in concert with Connecticut, but we care about Rhode Island's plant, that we're competitive when they are competing with Newport News and in Virginia and other jurisdictions capable also of producing the nation's submarine fleet. We need to make sure that we get the maximum growth that the Defense Department has to offer, and that there's no fraction of it that goes somewhere else.
So that's an interesting point, because the other thing is, for a political reporter, you watch and you say, as long as Jack Reed is the top Democrat on the Armed Services Committee, isn't Electric Boat almost certainly going to, for various reasons, not arguing any corruption, but just they're not going to want to anger someone who has such an important role in what they do. What specifics do you point to that mattered that the Raimondo administration did versus them saying, of course we're going to keep doing subs in Jack Reed's district?
First, I should say, I want to affirm the point. U.S. Senator Jack Reed is absolutely essential to ensuring that Electric Boat is so strongly positioned. The question isn't whether they're going to get any contracts at all. It's whether we're going to get the optimal amount of work with this full 1,300 jobs and then surging forward with even hundreds more. That's the question. So there are political forces across the country that are vying. Definitively, an essential element is Senator Jack Reed, and we worked in concert with him in his office. We are indebted to him, but we want to make sure we get the max in the way of jobs and, for that matter, revenue for Rhode Islanders.
What about, you mentioned in the news release job training and the role that had played, and you folks have put a lot. You have changed the job training significantly.
Yes, we have.
What is the state doing differently that Electric Boat is finding more useful, it sounds like, from the job training
Great
programs?
question. When Governor Raimondo took office, she and the CEO of Electric Boat had a phone conversation, and what they talked about was the fact that there was a really scattershot approach to training for that company. This was not a hypothetical problem, it was a problem in action, where there were providers that were yielding very few candidates for jobs, yet money was being funneled to them. There was no system. There was New England Tech over here and CCRI over there, and our career and technical high schools and our traditional high schools, and the Department of Labor and Training really working in a way that was atomized, not coordinated, not serving the need of the company, said Jeff Geiger. And both of them spoke of this at the podium. It's very publicly true. And what Governor Raimondo did is she quite literally called everyone into the room together. And she said to public and private providers, I need you to work together. I need you to work on a comprehensive system. And Scott Jensen, the director of DLT, played a major role here as our leader on these issues and orchestrated a system, and then went to the federal government and said, now we have a coherent system for this purpose. We know that there are jobs being created. We know that there are Rhode Islanders qualified for these jobs, and they funded us to the tune of millions of dollars. So we were able to secure federal dollars to do the job for us, supplementing our state dollars. That's what happened. And that was quite literally, this is not a figurative thing. In a room, the governor gave the charge to us all and made it happen.
I want to follow up on Ted's Matt Brown question. I want to read exactly what he said. He said, why do Rhode Island taxpayers, many of whom are struggling to make ends meet, need to give $30 million in subsidies to General Dynamics, a massive corporation which made $30 billion in revenue last year and paid its CEO $21 million in 2016? It has more money than it knows what to do with. There's a reason he's saying this, because it resonates with people. They do their research. They know that other candidates are saying almost exactly the same thing. Do you have a communications problem here in selling the message?
No, I don't think we have a communications problem. I think there may be a logic problem in what was just presented, that point that was just made. The logic problem is this. Newport News has big corporations producing submarines too. There are other defense contractors in the United States that are well financed. That's not the question. The question is, what does the government jurisdiction do to build the platform, to get the port ready, to get the roadways ready, to make sure the workforce is prepared, and yes, to make sure that they are competitive in their financial structure to compete. Same thing is true everywhere. We just have to make sure that we do ours smart, we do it as lean as possible, but we produce in a big way for Rhode Islanders.
So what about with Amgen in West Greenwich? They announced they're building a big biomanufacturing plant there, more incentives for them. Amgen is already anchored in this state. They have a massive facility in West Greenwich. People drive by it on 95, they see it. Were they really going to build that plant somewhere else?
Oh yes.
Where were they going to build it?
They went forward. You realize they're not headquartered here. They're headquartered on the West Coast. They have plants in a variety of places across the country and are considering places across the world. They have a plant in Puerto Rico. This is a truly global company. They have a presence in Rhode Island, which gives us a leg up, maybe gives us a presence in their mind. But they issued a global RFP. They searched across the world literally. They looked at sites domestically and globally, and then they whittled down. You'd have to ask them about their precise process.
For this bioplant.
For this bioplant, which is their very first state-of-the-art modular bioscience, biomanufacturing plant. And in the competition, we won. And it was a fierce competition. By the way, they started anonymously. They didn't even reveal who they were as a company.
Was it the $2.2 million incentives that put Rhode Island over the edge? I mean, in the global scheme of things, that's not a lot of money.
It's not a lot of money. And Tia Bush, who's the local executive in charge, stated publicly, it did do the trick. It was a critical factor, and believe me, they negotiated hard for those incentives. They wanted to make sure that we were in a position where financially this made sense for them to do compared to the other places competing. But they did also express that was critical. That did the trick. But our workforce commitments, the university partnerships, the openness and responsiveness of government, their success in recent years in Rhode Island, it all contributed, definitively.
So we're asking a lot about tax incentives on specific programs. I want to zoom out on that question a little bit, since it's being debated so much. I remember when these programs were first proposed, you all talked a lot about how you were trying to structure them so that you didn't write the checks off the 38 Studios style, where we gave them a check before it was clear they were going to succeed or whatever, and then we know what happens. Do you know how much has been awarded versus how many checks you've cut so far?
Yes.
People are saying she's cutting checks to big companies. How many checks are being cut, or whatever the actual mechanism is?
Very few. I'm glad you raised it that way. Very few, Ted. So the Qualified Jobs Program, which is the program that offers the repayment of personal income taxes to the company that creates the new jobs, that Qualified Jobs Program will, over the next year, maybe produce checks for under a couple $100,000. That's the amount.
Despite giving out millions or awarding
the
millions.
commitments are tens of millions, maybe call it $50 million of commitments over the next 10 to 12 years for the now 24 companies that have landed or expanded in Rhode Island under that program. So the reason that so little money is going out the door is that the jobs have to actually be produced. Not just that there's a plan to create the jobs, not even just that you build out the facility for the purposes of those jobs. You have to actually produce them. The person serving in that position needs to be in it for a year and pay the taxes, not claim to pay the taxes. The taxes need to be in receipt for the refunding of those taxes to the company. That is a structural form of security. That means that there's inherent accountability in the system. We don't pay unless the people are being employed, unless the jobs actually exist. And that's why it is absolutely not the case that money is flowing and it's unaccountable if anyone is claiming that. Quite the contrary. We're very careful, and the payments are very few at this point.
So the flip side of that is that means that when we get these announcents, when you get 1,300 jobs, they want I don't know, $10 million in qualified jobs, whatever it is. Those are kind of maximums then, because they could theoretically tell you we think we'll do 100 jobs, and they're like, we'll give you 25.
Exactly right.
And so you could end up with fewer jobs than you announced, but you would pay less as well.
We would pay less as well if the fewer jobs were produced. And keep in mind, typically the way we structure these arrangements is there are tiers. So for the first 100 jobs, once you reach the threshold of the promised 100 jobs, payments begin. For the second 100 jobs, it could be smaller increments, 50, but you get the point. Let's stick with the hypothetical. If you don't hit the first 100 job threshold, there's no payment, not until you hit that threshold. That's how these deals are negotiated. So we push these companies to express to us what their goals are. We push them to articulate them, and we make these arrangements on that basis. Only when the jobs are delivered are the payments made. It could be less. It could even be zero if they don't hit their targets.
One other question on that, which is, I was talking to someone I know in Massachusetts who tracks this stuff up there. They do give out absolutely some incentives for large deals in Massachusetts, but this person said it does seem like you guys do it every single time, whereas sometimes in Massachusetts we'll get relocations or we'll get expansions that don't have do you think Rhode Island can get to a place where you could be more selective, where sometimes we'd have announcements that don't have taxpayer money attached to it?
Oh, I can tell you there are arrangements now that we are not entering into. There are scenarios where we're not offering incentives. Now, we don't typically reveal, or I should say embarrass a company, but there are applicants who come to us where we decide, you know what, we don't believe that incentives are necessary, but it may not be the totality of the conversation. We may say, are there other ways we can partner? I will say also there are scenarios where, say, Citizens Bank decides to create a new complex, and they needed a bit of infrastructure, roadway access, but Commerce played zero role in offering incentives in that instance. So it may appear that every deal involves incentives. Because we have so many of them, we proudly have a lot of movement, but these 24 scenarios involving companies are only a subset of the activity in the economy.
All right, why don't we do this? Why don't we take a bit of a breather? I think some of our viewers are going to want an update on some high-profile things. We're going to ask you about Pawtucket. We're going to ask you about the Superman building.
I'm very surprised by that.
I know you are. Our guest this week is Rhode Island Commerce Secretary Stefan Pryor. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Question. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my left, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi. Our guest this week, Rhode Island Commerce Secretary Stefan Pryor. Some house cleaning. Let's do Pawtucket first, right?
Yes.
You know, a lot of viewers say, okay, this is what I know. House Speaker really doesn't like the Senate version of the bill, or didn't, and the city of Worcester has been trying to lure the team up to Massachusetts. There have been a lot of other things that have gone on in between, but I think really when people think about it, that's probably their level of knowledge. Mm-hmm. Where do things stand?
Well, first of all, let me affirm for you, the city of Worcester, and for that matter, the state of Massachusetts, they are making an earnest effort. There is a real effort underway to take the team from Rhode Island.
How do you know?
I've heard directly from people involved with the conversations, and the team has reported it as well. There's news reports for that matter. So there's no doubt about that. That's not a myth. Now, it also remains the case that if we lose the team, we will lose money every year post the new investment. Even if we make a new investment, the minority share of the new facility, net of that, we will lose money every year because of the revenue that the team generates with team salaries and sales tax and the like. That's money to the state treasury. So taxpayers of Rhode Island will lose money, will be hurt if we lose this team. Now, having said all of that, I know that this is a tough issue. It's a tough issue because, let's face it, we have the ghost of 38 studios. We have concerns always, legitimately, about making a public investment in a private facility, or even if this one is a public facility, which it is, involving private parties. I know all of that. It really is a dialogue now with the Speaker's office, rightfully so. The Senate has done its part, now it's in the House. My understanding is that the Speaker is driving a hard bargain. He's in dialogue with the parties. He should be. The Speaker has been terrific on issues of economic development. He understands what a good arrangement looks like. He knows what a positive project is for Rhode Island. I'm optimistic that at the end of the day, they'll do yet better with this arrangement in a way that's reasonable and that the team can accept, and it will proceed. That's all I can say for now.
To be candid, it's also tough because it's an election year, right?
It is. I do think, look, it's politically loaded. There's no secret about that. I think it does make it harder for everyone, but the timing is what it is. Worcester is in play now. This team has been working at it. To the credit of the Paw Sox, they've been out there, community meetings in Pawtucket, out there on the airwaves. They've done their share of interviews. They've done more than their share of public hearings. Probably a record number of public hearings in the Senate on a single matter. They've done their job. We all hope that there's an arrangement that works for the House and works for Rhode Islanders.
Right. And the other piece of house cleaning I want to get to is the Superman building. It's been vacant since 2013. Mm-hmm. I had to Google it this morning. I was like, wow, 5 years that building has been empty. What's going on? Where are we?
Thankfully, there continues to be interest from some end users, meaning from some companies that might want to occupy it. When I say that there's interest, it's an active conversation happening now with some possible end users. My point of view is the likelihood is what we have to do to get the building done, to light it back up, to bring it back into use.
Which is what? What do we have to do?
We have to make sure that there is a corporate user, a major tenancy from one or more companies, because the podium of the building is perfect for even today's companies' needs. About 20,000 square foot floor plates, which were pretty big. Companies these days want a wide expanse horizontally. And then above it, probably some more commercial uses, but it could in fact involve residential uses and hotel uses. These are options. So I'd imagine a mix of uses, but there will likely be a commercial tenancy or more than one. And Tim and Ted, it might take some time to get there. If there were no interest, I would be telling you something different. I would be saying to you, we've got to shift gears altogether. We've got to completely rethink the use of this building. What I'm saying to you is we are in active conversations with companies who believe that, especially the podium of the building, the lower floors, and are attractive, and they think that it's a gorgeous building with incredibly great geographic positioning in the heart of the downtown of our capital city, so close to public transportation and all of the amenities of Providence. It's a beautiful building that should be reoccupied.
The podium is what it is, but it's an old building, you know, HVAC, all these things that have to go into it. Should it be torn down? Is that an option that's on the table?
Not
down the road.
Certainly not as a first resort, and we think we're still in the phase where we can definitively look at these possible occupancies, these possible tenancies, because they're viable, they're interested, they've toured the building, they've looked at, as we have, the environmental conditions, the renovation requirements, these technical considerations have been closely looked at. We believe it's feasible. It's not going to happen overnight. It is a very complicated project. It's going to take a lot of work on everyone's part, but the market is showing us that there is interest. That's what counts.
Do you think a Superman renaissance, whatever it would take, could be done within the existing commerce programs and authority you have under current law, or do you think you'd have to do some kind of special legislation to get enough the public side of that project that's inevitable?
That remains to be seen. I think there are versions that can be done with our existing tools and with the resources of other stakeholders. I think there are versions, but we need to see what the ultimate mix of uses is and the precise financial situation.
Wall Street Journal had an interesting story the other day about the calls the calls states and cities got when to be told they are not getting Amazon HQ2. And they found that quite a few cities in different parts of the country are actually learning from that and taking action based on the feedback. You got one of those calls when Amazon said, no, we're not coming to Providence. I'm curious if you can give us any readout kind of
Sure.
what did they talk about? What did they point to? What did you hear from Amazon?
I can tell you that they were very eager to have a full conversation about our bid. They were not in any kind of rush. They wanted to elaborately express to us what they viewed our proposal as.
So it wasn't perfunctory. They clearly
it was not at all perfunctory, and they expressed that it was a very strong proposal, that it favorably impressed them. They used words like creative, enormously creative. I remember that they said it was very responsive to the dozens of requirements in their request for proposals, that we hit every point. And what they said was, this will reflect well upon Rhode Island throughout the life of your relationship with this company. We're circulating your bid to other parts of the company, and you will likely have other active conversations with us, other conversations about other purposes, distribution centers and the like, and this will help inform our decision making. So by no means was it a wasted exercise. That was their unprompted comment to us. And I mentioned to them, well, we have been approached by Amazon in the past, and they said, well, you'll be hearing more from us in the future. Indeed, we have. We've had conversations with them. We continue to have conversations with them very actively. And they were very careful to say, I asked, what were the shortcomings? Please be honest with us. Be as raw as you need be. And they said, really, there was no deficiency. It was purely that your scale was not the kind of scale we're looking for, which I interpret to mean 50,000 new employees. They worried that flowing into Rhode Island, any portion of our state, would be a burden upon our infrastructure and wouldn't happen on their timeline, I would imagine. I did push them to explain it, and that's the best interpretation I can give you. So,
was public transportation a big part of that?
I think that they viewed what we've done around public transportation as favorable. I think that for a few reasons, but I do think it's the burden upon it, yes, would have been a factor. And housing would have been a concern. And just the ability to get up and running fast enough with the amount of pre-built commercial office stock. You can imagine all the things that need to happen for 50,000 employees. It's like building a mini city in a very short period of time.
We're running low on time, so I want to ask you a quick one. we're hearing some talk from gubernatorial candidates about lowering the sales tax. And you talk often about the need for taxes to be competitive. We are higher than the rest of the New England on the sales tax in Rhode Island. What do you think of that? Do you think that's something that should be more seriously considered than maybe it has been?
About a minute.
As the commerce guy, I'm always interested in looking at tax reductions and tax sanity. But I will tell you, Governor Raimondo has made enormous strides in this direction. She's lowered the corporate minimum that affects many small businesses, most businesses, twice. She's lowered unemployment insurance tax twice. She's eliminated the tax on energy for business altogether.
She has, but talk about the sales tax.
Well, we've already gone in that direction, is my point, lowering tax burden in a way. We've lowered the car tax, which affects almost all Rhode Islanders. 1/6 of
So she does not want you to come out for a sales tax.
1/6 of plates are commercial or combined plates, which affects businesses. So those things have all helped. My concern about any new measure is how are we going to pay for it? And I've seen and heard estimates that a significant reduction in, say, the sales tax could as much as double our deficit. I'm not the fiscal expert who should look at such matters. I don't have definitive numbers myself. But someone needs to demonstrate that this can be paid for and will not create a multiple of our deficit, balloon our deficit, and create a big financial burden for Rhode Island.
Commerce Secretary Stefan Pryor, thank you very much for joining us on the program. And
Thank
for
you.
most of you watching on a Sunday, happy Mother's Day, especially to our #1 viewer, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. For Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.